All right,
So
so
the
where are we
challenge
today? So
has
doing
been,
Saturday 10 BB.
uh,
So
hmm?
yeah, tell me exactly what's going on with challenge and where you're at the moment and where you
All
want
right.
to
So
continue.
um, where I am now, still still sort of reviewing the preflop stuff. Uh, I already have a pretty good grasp of it, so it's been pretty boring. Just like going over stuff I'm already pretty familiar with. Um, Next week, or I guess this week, we'll be starting to dive into the single race pots, and then probably shouldn't take that long. I'm already again pretty familiar with the strategies, and then 3-bet pots the next week, 4-bet pots. The thing that I'm not 100% on is obviously I don't know what open size he's going to be using, whether or not he's going to be using a limping strategy, whether or not we should be using a limping strategy. Um, so if you could give me your thoughts on a couple of those, that would be great. Like primarily, what do you think about implementing a limp strategy of our own? I've never used a limping strategy before, and I have all my experience with heads up has been with just a 2.5x open.
Yeah, you should probably definitely be using a limping strategy, and you should be using multiple open sizes. Just using a single open size is probably going to end up being um a bit inferior to using multiple open sizes, especially once the second to pot ratio starts to change a little bit.
Okay.
Um,
What do you think about instead of oranging the open size? What do you think about just using the open size, like correlating the open size with this effective stack depth?
no, you end up with the same problems. Um, I'll share my screen with you now. So you see here, I think this is one of strings, preflop sims, a couple of them. It's sort of like relatively low rake. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so there's limp, there's 2.1, there's 2.5. And you see like 15% is limping. So like you're limping more often than you're folding, which is significant. And like you limp, and there's a variety of response sizes. Like the response size goes all the way up to 450. So like there's a lot of different responses that you should know how to play against.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if you have this particular set of sims, but
Another question I had is, should we be splitting our 3 bets, and if so, how many sizes should we use?
yeah, so it's
Because
the same. It's the same thing. Like you should be splitting pretty frequently, like all the time. Because heads up, there's the most like opportunities to split. The reason why in six max, three max, whatever, there isn't as much splitting is because of the third player. It produces an equilibrium in the sizes a lot more. Like it produces like a near optimal size because there's multiple players. But when there's only two players, there's lots of sizes that are co-optimal, right? So it's not that there's one best size or whatever. There's
yeah.
usually multiple sizes that need to be played simultaneously in order to produce a strategy that ends up being good for a particular for that particular player. So, like I mean, here against the 2.5, there's goes from 8.75 all the way up to like 12 and a half. So it's quite a wide range of sizes, and each different size is going to have different polarity associated with it. You can see
Yeah.
like Ace King suited is not being used in the big sizes. Ace Queen suited is not really being used in the big sizes, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Ace King offsuit in the big size, right? Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's all the
I am
times,
somewhat
right?
familiar with that, and I'm aware that that translates to post flop in a lower a lower c bet frequency when you 3-bet to a larger size generally. Is that your experience as well?
I mean, that's pretty standard for poker. Whenever you make a big bet on the previous street, you tend to check and give up a lot more on the next street. Just because
Yeah.
you have more bluffs in the previous street, and when they call, the range is stronger, so you need to give up more.
Yes.
So that happens pre-flop to flop as well.
Also, the c bet sizes, again, from what I've seen, tend to be a bit bigger um, when you do continue barreling. And And I think that's just more of the overall equity advantage being more evenly spread throughout the ranges when you three bet to a smaller size. So when you three bet to a smaller size, they have more like hands that could barely call the small three bet that auto fold to a smaller bet, or are made indifferent to a small bet. And then against the bigger size, they're felting a much stronger range that you're playing against. So you have to be a lot more careful about what hands you choose to continue putting in money with. I think that's why. Right?
Yeah, sure. The thing is that you get those folds before the flop rather than on the flop. It's the same sort of thing. You just get the folds at a different point of the tree.
Okay.
You end up with like for roughly the same sec pot ratio going into the turn, you end up with sort of the same relative range strength. Obviously, it's a little bit different because in the bigger sizes, so for example, you go 12 for 12 and a half with ace king off, so it's easier to get all in by just betting the turn and betting the flop bigger and jamming the turn. It's hard to do that with the smaller size. Smaller size, you probably have to play more for 3 streets.
That's another thing I noticed. It's interesting you say that. I did a study block maybe 7 or 8 months ago. That was primarily focused on heads up, which is why it got me to the point where I am now, essentially. It wasn't super long, but I tend to have a knack for learning things fairly quickly. But what essentially I found in the 3-bet pots especially was the solver was using a 3E strategy and a 2E strategy. I think that's the correct way of phrasing it. Where essentially it would have a smaller 1/3 pot bet or 1/5 pot bet that it decides to draw out the barreling over 3 streets, and then you would have like a pot size bet or an over bet to accompany that betting strategy. So you would have sort of this two-pronged betting attack where you have the smaller bets with like the sets and the thin value, and then you have the big bets with hands that are ahead of 95% of opponent's range right now, but that could easily change on some of the spicier runouts.
Yeah, so that's just haste. So it's pretty straightforward phenomena. There's certain hand types on those particular boards that have a relatively low equity but are ranking quite high. So with those hands that have got a relatively high haste, which rank high now, but their equity is fairly low, well, relatively low compared to their rank, you would just bet big on earlier streets. If not, like sometimes you would see it in 3-max where you just rip the flop, or just bet big on the flop and then jam the turn.
Yeah. I haven't studied that much 3-max. I probably should, but that's probably my weakest game type. I'm good at 6-max and I'm good at heads up, but 3-max is a weak point of mine. Not a big deal because the table always fills if there's a fish anyway, and I don't really like reg battling. But that's interesting that you mentioned that shows up in 3-max because I'm not especially familiar with that particular setup. I do know like certain boards rip, like the Jack 10, 7 flush draw boards will occasionally rip flop for like 3x pot or whatever in the 3-max situations. I'm aware of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is the old sim. So, I mean, you can see it has plenty of limping.
Yeah.
And there's probably isolating a bit above 450 as well. The solver just doesn't see it because it doesn't exist, so it all shrinks it down to this 450 level. So you see how it goes 2.66 and then 3.52. There's stuff above that. So this 3.52 should be spread out at the top here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's kind of what all that means. there's a lot of different sizes that you can and should be using against the limp, like
How many
3x, and there's a
how much should we sort of
betting.
trim down the tree in terms of, because this is giving what, 15 different ISO sizes? Like, do you think like 2 ISO sizes is good enough to study? Because there's obviously going to be diminishing returns on, like if we studied, half the ISO sizes, we would get 99.9% of the EV of studying all the ISO sizes, right?
No, because your opponent can just use the ISO size that you haven't studied, and then you're
I mean,
screwed.
like
So
you can sort of interpolate the effects of, like if you've studied the 4x ISO size and the 3x ISO size, you can sort of figure out that like the 3.5x ISO size is going to be somewhere in between that in terms of like post-flop effects and pre-flop effects.
yeah, sure. So you can do that, but if you just miss some stuff and you only study outside yourself for some stuff, like if you study these big sizes and you miss the small sizes,
Yeah.
you won't know what's going on with the small sizes. So like
Yeah,
here the response to the small sizes is like really different. Like you're in position for betting down to like pocket nines, right? And then against the big size, pocket nines doesn't really do that. A lot less. These suited broadways just call now, and they're all four bet. So pretty substantial differences in the response strategy, and there's a bit of a gradient in between where a lot of these suited broadways go from always four betting for value to just flatting.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the important takeaway is essentially getting a grasp of what that gradient looks like. Maybe not memorizing, for example, the exact frequencies, which is essentially impossible if you have 19 different ISO sizes. Just getting an idea of like how an increase in the ISO size affects the gradient of hands that continue against that size.
Sure. I mean, this particular sim doesn't have that many sizes. I mean, here this is the sim that I ran. And this is the one with a whole bunch of different open sizes. You can see the open size is for 100 big blinds. You can see the open size is like for 100 big B. I mean, it starts off with a lot of small sizes and then it tapers off. And like the maximum frequency is 2.1 actually, or 100 big blinds. This is without limping. With limping, it probably end up being like 2.2. But you can see the point. There's like a lot of different sizes that you can use. So like here I use this small size, and then there's a bunch of different three bet sizes ranging from 7 all the way up to like 13.6. Right. And you need to be able to play like all of these
Do you think the
for both players.
do you think the bigger sizes, like if you could go back to the previous screen, do you think like the very big 3-bet sizes or the very big open sizes that are used very, very infrequently are like, at what do you think some of that could just be solver noise? Like if you had run the solve down to a finer accuracy, some of those would be eliminated completely?
I mean, maybe, but you still need to be able to defend against them because your opponent can just use them against you exploitatively. And if you don't have a response that's near GTO, then you don't know what you're doing. And if you don't know how to play like post flop, like a lot of these sizes, like even if you run them further and they end up being 0%, like the EV of them is still going to be very similar. That's why it's still being played. So like
Yeah.
this 3x, 3.5.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if these sizes are still being played, and you run the solver close to whatever completion is, then it means that the EV is difficult to prevent, and so like you should be trying to take some of these lines where you come with like a really big open size, like 3.5 or something, and like 3.5, they still need to continue 45% of the time. So they still need to know how to play against it. The players a call, and then what happens, and then you check back the flop, and then what happens, right? If they don't know what's going on in position, out of position, then they'll have trouble. Another thing is like open min. So, for example, they open min or whatever, and like here, this is 14 big blind, 3-bet size. It's a bit of a 15 big blind, 3-bet size. Like if you take one of these, right, you go min and then you go 14 big blinds. How exactly you need to defend against it? 73% folds. That means you're continuing 26, 27% of the time, and 19% of that is a call. So they need to know how to play the flop 19% of their opening frequency after they open min once you go to this huge size. So like they still need to know what to do. They can't just fold and rely on the fact that you put a big size into them capturing their EV. There's a significant amount of calling EV here, right? 2BB, 0.25. So this calling range itself has got 1.75 blinds in EV, so 175 BB per 100. So a lot of these hands towards like the edge that feel pretty crap defending against this will give EV if they overfold, or if they underfold, then you need to know that too. So like if they open 2.4, and like you can still see there's some really big sizes here. Like this sim isn't solved all the way down, but solved a reasonable amount, right? It means that these big 3-bet sizes still co-equilibrium, like they're in the equilibrium still. So like that you still need to be able to defend against them. So open 2.4, you go to like 15.6 or 14.4, right? How is it defended? And like the range which defends against a 14.4 is pretty much the same as the range that defends against 14.0 over 2BB.
Yeah.
But like you as the 3-better, like if you take some of these sizes, right, you need to know how to play post-flop. And playing post-flop when you're the aggressor is a lot easier than the defender, even though the defender is in position here.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you do some stuff where like you take these big sizes and you learn how to play some of them really well, sizes are a little bit bigger than what most people use, you can end up printing against most opponents because you end up getting all the folds pre-flop. So you can add some additional bluffs here, especially if they're not like 4-betting you a lot. Like you notice here, the 4-bet frequency needs to be around like 10%. And a lot needs to be jams, and like you need to find jams with like pocket threes, right? Type stuff. So
yeah.
King
I
Jack
did notice.
offsuit.
What's the rake on this sim?
This one I think was one B capped at 5, and here this is a lower one. So it's a lower rake sim. So a lower rake, the sizes shrink a little bit, but not by huge
I've
amount.
noticed that.
There were jams with like pocket twos. 30.75, jamming with pocket
A lot
twos.
of the higher rake sims, you see a lot more just like 4-betting in general, but a lot more jamming as part of that 4-bet strategy, just because you're more incentivized to take down post or sorry pre-flop, right? So yeah, it's definitely going to. I think everything is going to be calculated out rakeless. We're still trying to figure out where exactly we're playing, but it seems to me that it will very likely be calculated out rakelessly. Even if we do play on like ACR or anything, side bets and everything are going to be rakeless. So, like I do have some pretty low rake sims. I have some string stuff, and that's what I've used to study.
Yeah,
But I have
string stuff is all low rake. If you want to do rake free, yeah, don't envy. Probably have to run some. I don't mind doing that. I just don't have any hardware resources at the moment, so I have to buy more hardware for that particular purpose.
yeah. I do you think we're going to have to rent out server space to run some? I'm actually running some. Never rented out server space before.
No, I can do that for you. That's fine.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
I just need the funds for all that because servers are expensive as fuck. They cost about $500 a month per server.
Oh, it's not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can help you out with that.
So if you want one for pre-flop and one for post-flop, you can do that. Yeah, I don't know how much you would need for post-flop because like a lot of the post-flop should be Okay, I mean, there's single raise pot stuff, which I don't know how much does your wizard have. The thing is, I don't know what their I don't have a full account here, so
Yeah, I've used GTO Wizard a lot, and I think it's a I mean it's decent for studying, but it's not as good as Pio. You don't have the same uh, flexibility with how you run your sims, how you construct your sims. They're all sort of 500 NL rake, and you get predetermined sizes. I think I'm going to be using Pio for this challenge to study this challenge. Maybe during the challenge I'll use GTO Wizard to look up hands and whatnot, but that's probably how I'm going to play it. What are your thoughts on GTO Wizard?
I mean, it's okay. They just don't have enough of the solutions that you would want, right? So like, I don't know, raise 2.5. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
horrible. This is just the cash NL 500.
yeah. The more rake there is, the less limping there is. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's true as well. There's going to be, I mean, if you're playing no rake, you need to be doing a lot of limping. Yeah, this is the different rate levels. They get different rate levels in heads up in six max, but not heads up. So yeah, I'll probably be right, and I probably need to run some rake free heads up stuff. Well, yeah. And it depends like how many stack depths you want.
Yeah, I don't think we'll need. So it's my understanding that once you get above a certain point in terms of SPR, things start getting more and more similar. Like there's going to be very little difference about how 2 million big blinds deep pot would play and a 4 million big blind deep pot. Like once you approach a certain limit of stack depth, there's going to be like a convergence in the strategy toward like an infinitely deep optimal strategy. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, those levels are much higher than what you would standard play, what you normally play. Like if you're playing between 100 and 200, there's like a significant difference between the two.
I agree. I
Um,
agree. I've run up to 300 big blind deep, specifically 3-bet pots, and I've noticed that out past 300, I think things start getting a lot more similar. Um, but 100 and 200 still very different. And I've noticed that and this is why I like Pio a little bit more than GTO Wizard, because I've sort of tinkered with the sizes back when I was doing a lot of heads up study, and there are a lot of 3-bet pots that you play like 200 big blinds deep that use the 2E size, kind of like the 100 big blind deep 3-bet pots, but 2E for 200 big blinds is significantly bigger. So instead of a 125% over bet, you start using a 200% pot over bet in some instances. Especially on like, I've noticed like the 10 high disconnected boards where they have a lot of straight draws, like out of position will just like 2x the flop. Like it's pretty insane. That's my understanding of.
yeah, I mean that's just the haste thing again. So like when you three bet, you add positions, 200 big ones deep, looking at
Mhm.
got like nines, and then all the tens, three bet all the
But
tens, and then the full betting capped at tens,
I noticed that
25, 30.
that sort of 2E strategy went away after a certain point. And I think it was around like 250, 300 big blinds deep, where it got to the point where you were too deep to get it in with an over pair on like 10-7-5, because you're just isolating yourself against two pairs and sets at that point. If you're deep enough, you can't just stack off with one pair, right? So I think I'm going to definitely. I definitely need to review some of that stuff.
Yeah,
But
sure. The issue is like you're not gonna be playing that deep all the time, right? Most of the time you're gonna be playing between 100 and 200 because you're gonna be resetting every 2 hours, right? Um,
yes, correct.
so like, what is, and you start with 100. What is the chance of the both of you getting to 200 BB? Like, it has to get to a stage where like you've lost one stack, two stacks, and you won one stack back. Um, right, in order to get to 200 rebounds each.
Yes.
So how often does that happen? I mean, we'll see when the challenge goes. But I think in the meantime, just running like a bunch of 100, 150, 200 big blind, 100, 150 big blind deep sims is probably what we need for now. And you guys aren't going to be playing less than 100, so won't worry about that. So a lot of the 100 big blind stuff will end up looking like this. And if there's no rake, because there's going to be even more limping than this has. And the counter to the limping strategy is going to be a little bit more clear. But there's going to be like a lot of different 2-bet and 3-bet sizes that you'll want to use because
Okay.
in heads up, the everything is going to be very much co-optimal. Like there's going to be a lot of things that very close to each other, a lot of sizes that will seem very close to each other in terms of EV, but have vastly different strategy going on to the flop because the ranges are very different. And that's fine. You don't have to worry about stuff like bunching or anything like that because there is none. So if there's no rake and there's no bunching, you're playing 100 big blinds deep, heads up. It's a very I don't know, clean version of the game to solve. And but the result is that a lot of the solution itself will be sort of a smear across different sizes rather than having peaks at particular optimal sizes because there aren't any sizes that are going to be optimal. Multiple sizes are going to be co-optimal because different hands want to use different sizes all the time pre-flop. Um, and then it's just your opponent playing back against you that makes that not the case. So like here, what we're looking at, the hands like the A7 offsuit, King 7 offsuit, 10-2 suited, 9-2 suited, those hands don't really want to be doing any limping because when they limp and they face a bet, they'll be close to indifferent. They don't really like that. Right, compared to like Queen 2 offsuit, King 2 offsuit, they can limp and then fold quite happily.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I noticed
Like
that.
King 2 offsuit, because like these hands here, which raise all the time, they're like clear raise folds, right? But with their limp and they face a bet, it's not really clear what they'll do. And so the solver itself will just avoid that situation entirely, but it's always raising it.
Yeah, I did notice that there's like bunches of frequencies where a lot of the limping is concentrated toward the bottom. Then you have like a little period, like you described, around like the A7 to 9-7 off, where there's very little limping and a lot of the offsuit 6x as well. And then like once you get above that, like the 10-8 off, 9-8 off, and some of the offsuit broadways, especially Queen High, Jack High offsuit broadways, start limping again at a bit of a higher frequency. Similar with I think the suited hands as well, the Jack Deuce suited and down to 8-2 suited. For reasons.
Yeah, I mean it's because it's because those types of hands can deal with the relatively small ISO sizes. And then when the ISO sizes get uh, bigger, like all those hands that never limp will always fold. Like
Yeah.
a bunch of these hands here have got very low frequencies to start with, like 0.2%. So like they're not really in the spot. A bunch of these are 0%. So a bunch of these 0% hands, like they're always raised. And that's because those hands, when you think about it, they don't want to limp and then face a raise, but they'll be okay with raising and then folding to a 3-bet. Raising gets some folds, called by some worse hands, right? A hand like A6, King 7, King 6, they can dominate a significant amount of 6x and 7x that calls. So there's a bunch of 7x and 6x that calls against this min open size. Like all these offsuit sixes here, they're all calling. And so when you have ace6, king 6, a7, king 7, like it works really well by dominating that particular portion of the calling range. But when you limp, I mean, sure, there's that, but like then you face a big size and then you'll be indifferent. Or if you face a small size, you'll kind of just have to call, and then you'll be the one that is ending up being dominated because the hands that raise you are the hands that are basically stronger than your hand, like the stronger kings and stronger aces. So this is not as good versus if you raise and then you get 3-bet, it's fairly clear to fold those hands, right? So it's a combination of like these hands work really well as a raise because your opponent's weaker 6x, 5x, 7x holdings are calling you. The hands that are stronger than you are raising you, so you fold against the raise. So it works really well as an open raise, and then as a limp, you don't get that advantage of isolating your opponent, the opponent's range to be weaker 7x, 6x that you dominate. So there's a whole bunch of like that in these sims. Like this particular sim doesn't have a whole bunch of open sizes. So in terms of the plan moving forward, what I probably want to do is find some space to run rake free 100 BB heads up. I'll see what servers I've got available. I should have some. I think I might have one or two myself. Or I'll just get some from Contabo. So if you can just send me server rent for a month, I'll figure it out for you. I'll set up everything for you in terms of the heads up sim. And then in exchange for my time setting it up, after this challenge is over, I'll retain rights to the sim and then upload it to Zenith for sale. That's okay with
Sounds
you?
good. Yeah, that sounds
Great.
great.
Also, and that way it's a bit of a win-win. You get first access to it for this challenge, and then later on I'll have it to sell to other people who are interested in it.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds good. Another thing I wanted to ask you, do you know anything about Brandon's heads up game?
I'm not sure. Let me see. I might have an old copy of his database.
Because I got an interesting message yesterday from IamGTO123, and he was telling me that
him and Brendan are in cahoots, so I probably wouldn't trust anything that they say.
Are they? I heard they had a falling out.
Whole falling out, not falling out. I wouldn't trust it.
You wouldn't trust it?
I wouldn't trust any of these guys as far as I could throw them. So just
yeah. I'll just tell you what he told me essentially. Yo, rooting for you, buddy. You got this. Jimmy hasn't put in a big sample versus anyone, way overestimating his skills. If I were you, I'd try to make him play long sessions also. I said, thanks. Wonder why he was so adamant on playing me. Says Brandon has a big ego. He asked if I'd been studying. I told him I started prep, public information. Yeah, great. Try to make him play longer sessions. I think he gets worse in that format. He's not used to it, as long as you're good with it. He says he used to study with him some, so he has some insight. He says he's not naturally good and he needs time to study. Guy couldn't beat 200 not long ago. Massive ego, haha. If you beat him, it'll be hilarious. Anyway, good luck, bro. That's what he told me. What do you make of those messages? And do you have any insight on BBrown's actual skill and ability? Because I mean, this guy sort of came out of the woodwork and started talking smack. I'm also not entirely sure why he targeted me specifically.
I'm sure he targeted multiple public figures, and then you're just the only one who's talking up on it. Love Linus.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be back in like
Yeah.
2 minutes. 24.7. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So this is the database that I got for him. All the heads up stuff. He's only 5,000 hands here. I mean, I don't know what cycles and all that.
Oh.
Um, but this is only 5,000 hands of heads up. There's a bunch of hands for six max. I've got a couple 100,000 hands on him, but most of these are six max. So yeah, I mean, it'll tell you what sizes that he's used in the past, I guess.
Yeah, what stakes are these? Like I mean 4.6 is good, but it's not like this dude has been talked up to be elite, you know.
So stakes is in what?
Heads up and the entire sample.
Um, money off. This is what 5K NL. Just changing big ones.
So he won 8 buy-ins.
Big blinds. Um,
9 buy-ins.
yeah, 9 binds over 5,000 hands, PvP 100, 17.2. There's not a lot of hands on him doing this, so
Yeah.
it's all appears to be a bunch of like 5K now against some fish or something. Like he's opening 2.5, which is, it's a suboptimal open size,
If you
even at
could
this
only
level.
choose one open size, what would it be?
For 100 big blind, I don't know, probably be like 2.1 or 2.2. Like it's not,
Really?
yeah.
Oh,
Like
that's
it's
another thing I wanted to mention. It's like
really not.
if you don't have a limping strategy, your 3-bet frequency increases. I've noticed as well.
Yeah. So if you don't limp, your opponent should 3-bet you more. Because you got fewer shit hands in there in your
Yeah.
opening range.
Okay. Let's take a look at some of these that went to showdown. This is opponent opens to 2.1.
Yeah, I mean,
2 rather.
Look at results.
This is, just the big ones.
2.5, 10 at 10 ones deep. None of that. Trips, check float. I mean, okay. I float a half pop bet with the king high. Float to 10, makes a flush. Rips it, they go backdoors him. Same deal.
Oh, damn.
Straight draw.
Base call.
I just
Yeah.
2x pot jams river as a bluff and it's called by 2 pair.
Wait, go back to that. Go back to that last hand.
Well, he's out of position, big blind.
Yeah. Okay, so check calls the flop. It's fine. I'm trying to think
Check
of
call,
how
check raise 10, brick, jam,
does it even
jam
make
river.
sense to have the issue? The issue
Jam,
I
probably not.
see. Yeah, the issue I see here is like you don't have your opponent has like quite a bit of 6-8, I think. Do they sort of depends on how much they call the turn with it. I guess you could jam a bunch of sets. And it's probably fine, but you just don't have that many straights.
Here are 4 bets, and position flats. It's fine, I guess. Yeah. Raise, jam, call, and
So,
loses both of them.
yeah. Oh, good.
Was a 3 bet. And then runs into quads and a both.
Loses both again. Damn, Jimmy just runs like the worst I've ever seen. Whoa.
Well, I mean, we're looking at all his losing hands, so.
Okay. This one seems
3x, 14, 35, jam call. Okay.
I think we can assume it's a fish.
Yeah, I mean, all of these heads up stuff, it seems like he's playing against fish, and it seems like he's. I mean, we're just looking at his losing hands, but it seems like some of his stuff is not.
Yeah, these are all losing hands that went to showdown too, and I'm not seeing any light call downs. Like I'm just seeing, and he's evidently a blue line player, right? And I'm just
Yeah.
really not seeing any light call downs here. Kings versus queens. That could definitely be something we look for in the challenge. The fact that he may bluff catch too little.
And probably not bluff enough as well.
Yeah, that's
So you
definitely
get
a
the hard blue
possibility.
line.
Yeah, we haven't seen many triple offs either. Oh man.
Yeah, so some of this is probably just playing as a fish. So these hands were from a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Like I think you've been targeted or something. People think that you're not. that good at heads up or something. I don't really know. Like, I mean, the guy challenged me to heads up. I was like, yeah, I have better things to do. This is a year ago,
Really?
and like, it's just like I don't trust him to be able to follow through with any of that without
Mhm.
doing some tricks to scam me. So, look, if you can do it, great. X5, 11 call. Thing is, these sizes are all the same. It's like 11.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty basic strategy. I mean, this is essentially
Like everyone's
very
using 2.5. It's just like what is really going on here? Um, I mean, like the guy hasn't bluffed much, so that's why we don't see like too many big
I don't think we've seen
losses
a
in
single
his
bluff
rolls.
yet.
Well, that was that 6-5 hand, so where he just 2x
Oh yeah,
pot
yeah,
jam
right.
the river.
Damn.
Straight over straight. I mean, this guy's trying to bluff him off the. No, no, he value bet off the chop. I got called. Okay.
It's probably
And he had
fine.
it. And he called within and he binked the river. Um, yeah, pull that ball down.
There's a light call down. It was pretty easy bluff
Good.
catch candidate, but second pair, I guess.
No, no, it becomes top pair on the river. It was top two pair.
Yeah,
Um,
essentially with enough
and
flush
like
block.
he was the four better is the thing. So there's no overpairs to worry about.
Mhm.
You only worry about a queen, which the ball is on your blocks, and then you've got the flush blocker. Um, over trips.
We go back to the flop on this.
This one
Oh no, the other one. We bet. Yeah,
overbet
yes.
overbet call, half pot call, quarter pot call. Um, I don't know. It seems like some of these is playing against fish like a lot. So
I that last one just jumped out at me because that's something I would do. Is the flop over bet on the ace high double Broadway, the three bet pot, like very small over bet. I think it's
yeah, I
actually
mean some
sharp.
of these are just always playing against fish. Like this is on like name sites. The Truth 97. I don't know who that is. Like a lot of this was against players that probably fish. Like there's a bunch of name players here. And that's why he's like challenged them to this much. I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't seem that the strategy is is that complex. So it's probably better to just avoid those sizes that he's used. So avoid the 2.5 and avoid like the 11, 10, 11 big blind three bet and just go bigger or smaller than that.
Great, throw
Um,
everything out. Throw everything I've learned out.
I mean, because yeah, those sizes are, you know, like they're the average or in the middle. But like,
Yeah.
why do you need to play the same thing that he has? So if you want to have an advantage over him, you should go bigger and lower.
Mhm.
Because you've already learnt things that he's playing, right?
Yeah, I know the responses like
So
back of my
like
hand.
so if you already know that, then why do you need to study that more? You should
Mhm.
learn above and below. So then you're on advantage over him whenever you take one of those other sizes.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is, what if we, because if we ran post flop sims for every single size, right, that would just be way too many sims, way too many boards we'd have to run. It would take way too long.
Now
But
you can just create some sims with a size above and a size below.
Yeah, that's
So like,
exactly what I was
for
gonna say. It's
example,
like,
like 2.5, 10, or 11, that's pretty standard. But like, what happens when it goes to 12, right? What happens with the limp? Because like another thing is that this sim here has a limp, and so
mhm.
the limp will shrink the three bet size. And that's the
It'll
thing that, yeah, it'll
when
shrink the
you
three
say
bet
it'll
size
shrink the three bet size, it'll shrink the three bet size against the open or against the limp.
against the open.
Okay, so you're actually three betting to a smaller size against the open now that they have a limping strategy.
Yes, that's correct.
Interesting.
Because
I've never
it's
seen that.
got fewer weak hands in it, fewer weak hands and fewer middling hands, right? Because if you just play everything as an open, you can three bet bigger because there's too many weak hands in it that shouldn't really be in there.
But
So there's things that
wait,
you
wait,
should
wait,
probably
wait, wait.
practice as.
If it's if the three bet size is bigger, or if the range that you're attacking with your bets is has less garbage in it, shouldn't you go bigger to put more of the non-garbage hands in a tough spot? Because if they have a bunch of garbage, intuitively, the way I would think about it is they have a lot of garbage, so we can make them fold for a cheaper price with a smaller three bet, and a larger proportion of their range will be indifferent against a small three bet. But if
No. Like the if they're opening everything to 2.5,
mhm,
right? Say they go like 85% or something to 2.5. Um, the polarity of that ends up being a very polar opening strategy. Sorry,
merged, right? If they're
a very
opening
merged a
everything,
merged opening strategy. Yeah, my bad. A very merged opening strategy, like 2.5. Versus if they limp a bunch of stuff, right? Then the raise, which they range, is just stronger, right? Because they split the range in between into limping and raising. So they limp a bunch of weaker hands. So the raising range has fewer weaker hands in it, and so the proportion of strong hands in it is higher. And it's really the proportion of strong hands which prevents your three bet size from doing whatever, um, because they'll four bet you. So uh, when you have a split strategy between limping and raising, right? When you have a split strategy between limping and raising, the three bet as response to the raise size will be smaller because this big raise size has a larger proportion of strong hands in it compared to if you just raise everything for that size and not have a limping strategy. It has a lower proportion of strong hands in it, and so you'll three bet bigger, right? And that's one of the tricks. It's probably possible to run two different sims, one in response to BBrown, and then one for yourself as your opening strategy. When a response is in like the response is his 2.5, like an optimal response to that, because we assume that he's only running the one open size and not having any limps, and then you yourself will have uh, plenty of limps and probably smaller open sizes as well. Especially if there's no rake. There's no rake, then doing a lot of limping makes more sense.
yeah, that's a good point. Um, hmm. Exploitatively, if it turns out, could we go back to his stats
Take
in the
for example
database?
here, call, call check. I don't know how many tokens I've got for this. Yeah, check. That, and you'll have to learn the limping stuff.
Okay, it doesn't seem too crazy. I do want to look
Yeah. I
at.
mean, there's going to be a lot of checkbacks, I guess. I mean, there's not a lot of. There should be some sizes bigger than this, clearly.
I wish they had aggregate
Bigger than
reports
3.
for limped pots. That I don't think they have aggregate reports for limped pots yet. Oh, it's kind of annoying. It's
Check.
very easy to just skim through. the GTO Wizard stuff. I haven't used too many aggregate reports on IO. But I do want to also take a look at his frequencies in the database, like 3-betting, 4-betting, etc. It does seem like a lot of it was played against fish. How long has yeah, after you bring that up, I have a few questions.
No, it's not working.
Try going to the statistics tab.
Yeah, we're trying to get his whole cards. Yeah, heads up. Here's one opponent, 19.24.
Yeah, that's definitely a bit low. Depending, yeah, if your opponent is limping and you're also not playing any rake, it's not that low. But if your opponent is opening their entire continue range,
Here you go,
first in,
3-bet preflop, 22.66.
yeah, that's about right, I'd say. I think that's where mine is.
This is one limp up PFR 25%. This is one raise up. 3-bet 22.44%. I mean, it's probably not isolating as much as it probably could be. What is the ISO frequency here? 33%.
So what is your take on Brandon? Like, what is his, like, who am I playing? Because I honestly don't really know. How good is he? Is he really like, everyone talked him up to be like the greatest online poker player possibly ever. And I mean, I don't really know the guy like you do. So I was wondering if you had any
I mean,
insight.
I don't know about that. I mean, I know that he does a lot of dodgy stuff.
He has a lot of what?
He does a lot of dodgy stuff. He's probably not that good, and he does a lot of dodgy stuff. So I wouldn't put it past him to be like trying to RTA you or some shit.
Okay.
Or like have like if there's any chance that you've got, like someone's come over and put software on your computer, or you've downloaded something a bit strange, and there's some shit on your computer that could allow him to give you an advantage, give him an advantage over you. Like I wouldn't put it past him to be involved in shit like that. Or 3-bet, 37.43. Um, Fold to pre-flop 3-bet in the small blind. Oh wait, got a filter on him. Right, that's why I was a bit off. Yeah, okay. So yeah, his big blind. 3-bet pre-flop, three-bet pre-flop success, three-bet, yeah, 22.6. And he was playing against fish. That's probably why they've got low three-bet frequency. So his fold to three-bet, 56.15. His four-bet frequency. Yeah, his VFIT PFR is 100%, so just raising everything. 2.5, which is like we know that's suboptimal actually. 100 blinds deep. That's a known suboptimal thing to do.
Yeah, it's fine if your opponent isn't three betting you enough. But like
free
that,
flop
the exploit for that is
6.5.
obvious.
Yeah, forward pre flop 6.5. So yeah, that four bet frequency is a bit low as well in the small blind, and then the big blind, he's three betting 22.66.
All this points to someone who is trying to exploit
Four bet
a
plus
player
80.75.
pool or a specific player who doesn't three bet enough.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think like this sample is just him playing against fish. I mean, this sample is a bit old, but it's from a few years ago, so I don't have any of his recent hands.
Okay, yeah.
2021. 2021. So, I mean, I can't really say anything about that since it's a couple of years old. He might have gotten better since. Maybe not.
Yeah, he's known about the challenge for about like 2 months now. So, I mean, if he's not doing any work, that'd be pretty insane.
All right. What I would suggest is we'll probably hire a server or use one or multiple of mine in order to run the preflop sims. The equivalent is still going to be roughly the same cost for me. It's probably going to be $500 a month to run those servers, either a higher one or I'll run one of mine or multiple of mine in order to get roughly the equivalent amount of compute power as hiring a server.
Yeah, so let's figure out what exactly we're going to be running first before we talk about what servers are. So as for strategy, what do you think about like how many open sizes should we use? How many three bet sizes should we use? Because we can't just use 4 open sizes and including limps and 20 three bet sizes because that's 80 possible branches of the game tree, and we're not even into 4 bets yet, right? And so running sims for all of those configurations is going to be impossible, right? So I think we do need to simplify strategy down a little bit just so we have an idea of what sims to run, right? It can be more complex than just open everything to 2.5.
No, the thing is if you run the preflop simulation with a variety of different sizes, you just do what you said, and then like you just take the normalized range for both players and then plug that into the solver and then run postflop based on normalized range. So you just take a subset of whatever preflop situations you want to look at and then study those postflop. But then preflop, what that allows you to do is have more flexibility in terms of responding to anything that your opponent really throws at you. So in terms of sizes, like I probably wanted to do like a few increments. So like you can limp and then do min and then 2.2, 2.5. I don't know, 2.75 and 3, just because we know that they've used 2.5 before. The issue is that you might get some problems with the accuracy, right? So this is 100 big blind.
If we were to run a
Heads up
preflop
if you
sim,
go.
if we were to run a simplified preflop sim, essentially with 2.1 and 2.7 and limping as well, I think that would be sufficient to essentially have him with no real way to prepare against that. And it's also different than what he studied in the past. Because I also have 2.5 stuff. But if and that would also get the frequencies of the hands right. So if we have, that 3 option, like the triple option pre-flop, to raise first in or limp, and then we can potentially have another like 2 sizing strategy for 3 bets, because like if we go any more than that, things get a bit hazy, and it's like the butterfly effect for me, at least. It's like, I like, because poker's at its core a game of interpreting the information that you've been provided by your opponent based on their betting. And there's tells and whatnot. That is also information, but it's primarily a game of interpreting your opponent's information that they gave you based on betting, right? So if your opponent gave you information that they have a playable hand, so they raise to 2.5, and it's also, sorry, it's also a game that you are attempting to give as little information about your own holding as possible while still growing the pot to the size that your hand wants to grow the pot to win the most money at showdown, or bluff your opponent off, right? Does that make sense? And so the more wrinkles that we add pre-flop, the more difficult it will be for me to conceptualize the range that I'm dealing with post flop. Does that make sense? Like things start getting a lot more complex, and I'll get to a post flop spot in a certain spot, and I won't be exactly sure how my range is constructed. Like I'll have an idea.
So I'll run a couple different sims. One for your open and one for your versus open. Yeah. So one for you in the small blind, one for you in the big blind.
Mhm.
Right. Does that make sense? Based on the sizes that we think he's been using.
Okay. So I'm thinking it would
So
be
we'll just do that as
easiest.
an exploit for now, and then
I was just gonna say it would be easiest for me.
and then I'll also run like a bigger GTO one, which will take a little bit while to calculate. So that'll mean that it'll take a week or two to calculate the quick exploit ones, and then probably a month or two to grind along the GTO one with more sizes in case we need it later.
I think we should. So I think the best strategy, especially for me, since like
Yeah, I mean, we
my
just do
brain's not
exploit.
that
We just do
big.
exploit one sim for you being small blind and him being big blind, and one sim for you being big blind and him being small blind. Yeah, and then we just
Yes.
populate which sizes we like, and which sizes he's been using, and then give you one more size or like an extra couple sizes that are different to the ones that he's used or he
I
studied.
think so. So my optimal, like going into this challenge, what I would like to have done study wise is come in with both an understanding of pre-flop and post-flop that is extremely sharp on my given strategy, even though that strategy may not be perfectly optimal, while also having an understanding of why it's not optimal, and incorporating knowledge of what would make it optimal into improving my EV overall. But I
mean,
think
look,
if we go in,
look, we're already talking about running a sim that's more optimal than his strategy that we know of at the moment. Like it's more optimal than just opening everything to 2.5. Like you having a split between limp 2.1 and 2.7 is way closer to GTO than just 2.5 and no limp.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes,
So like
yes,
that 3x open, that three different spot open split is good, and then like you can have 2 splits for your three bet, or 3 splits for your 3 bet, whatever you want to choose, and 2 or 3 splits for your 4 bet. And then we just run the sim for we just make it so that he's only using his size or whatever size that we think he's going to use. And then just have the response to that. And then once the challenge starts, we'll recalculate stuff, but if he changes the size or adds more sizes. So what I'm saying is that we'll have these 2 exploit sims to start going into it, and then in the background be running like a GTO sim with a lot of different sizes that you can compare stuff to if you need it, as the challenge progresses. Because how long is this challenge going to last in total, like in terms of time?
So I was thinking it would probably last a month, but after further consideration, I think we could probably get it done in like 2 to 3 weeks. It's 25,000 hands. My estimation is we're getting like 300 hands an hour per table. I think is pretty reasonable heads up. That's like 500 to 600 hands an hour, and then 4 hours a day is going to be between 2,000 and 2,500. We might take a few days off here and there, but like between 2 and 3 weeks, I think it's actually like a pretty reasonable time frame to do this. It's going to be exhausting. It's going to be heads up is very intense, I find. But it should.
And did you guys figure out the stuff with the webcams? You guys gonna like be on call with each other the entire time?
Going to, screen record. I might push for webcams, but I'm not 100% sure it'll be necessary. I think screen recording.
I mean, I would be better with if you guys had webcams, so then at least you're sure that it's not someone else playing on his account. As well.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I'll touch base with him regarding that. I think that's everything.
All right, I'll send you a QR code so you can send me the money to get the servers started, and I'll start that for you. And it should be
so we're running
pretty quick.
To review, we're running preflop.
These are in Munker. Do you have Munker?
I don't have Munker. I have Bio.
All right, I'll just yeah.
Can you put them into the Zenith viewer and like lock it for?
Yeah, I can, but the issue is that might take a while because I need Alex to do that.
Oh, okay.
So it might end up being like an extra week or two before. So yeah, I mean, if you want to get yourself a Munker, I mean, you don't actually have to have Munker solver to view it. You can just use Munker viewer, but Munker viewer is shit. I mean, and Munker solver itself is a really powerful solver. You can do a lot of like multi-way and stuff. So it's something that you would probably consider from your point of view, given your current professional level. You should probably already have it if you haven't got it already, or you can split it with someone. Other way, you can just look at it in Munker viewer. It's not that big of a deal. Munker viewer should be able to view it.
Okay, great. So to review, the sims that we're running are going to be an exploit sim, which is the three sizing strategy: limp, 2.1, 2.7, right? And then we're going to get post-flop sims for all that, or are we just running the pre-flop for now?
We're on the pre-flop for now, and then if you want post-flop after you've looked at it, we can do that as well.
Okay.
Particularly of like I mean, you probably would want to have some idea of the post-flop strategy because it's going to be a little bit different depending on the different sizes. So that's going to take a little bit of time, even if the post-flop is simplified. I mean, I can probably run it all in GTO Plus using a handful of 128 gigabyte machines with 3 sizes rather than 5 on each flops and river, and it should be okay. The limp might be.
The limp trees get big.
Limp trees.
I'm actually running.
Might be a little bit of struggle there, but it shouldn't be.
I'm running limp trees on my machine right now. They're taking a very long time. Right now I'm done like 3 out of 25 in terms of limped pots, heads up, 100 big blinds, but I don't really see it as necessary to go more.
I think honestly the GTO wizard ones will probably be okay. But the issue is that these have rake in them, so they'll be a little bit different.
Mm.
So running rake free limped will be a little bit different.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then for the 3-bet pots, how many 3-bet sizes did you suggest? I suggested 2. Are you good with that? Or
Yeah, I mean 2 is fine, just as long as we have one above he's used to and one below, it should
we'll
be
go to
okay.
like, what do you think, like 8.5 and 12 big blinds?
Yep.
All right. I think that's everything.
And then when you think about the 4-bet size as well,
Oh yeah, that's right. What do you think about 4-bet sizes? I think 23 in a low rake environment, 25 in a high rake environment, but I guess we can do 23. Do we
yeah,
even really need to split
I'll take a
4-bet?
look at the ones. I'll take a look at the 4-bet sizes he's using, just avoid those. Probably end up being a bit smaller.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we even really need to split 4-bet sizes? 4-bet pots are, I mean, the SPRs are all going to be so similar anyway. Once you get to 4-bets, it's going to be like,
yeah, not really, unless you're quite deep. When you get to 200 big blinds deep, then it's more of a thing. You see how you got a split between ace king and ace king suited.
Mhm.
Like that split starts to become much more apparent.
Okay. Yeah, that
When you
does make
become deeper,
sense.
but when you're 100 big blinds deep, it doesn't really matter because you're not getting jammed on a lot. Anyway, yeah, 9.4, 21.17. It depends on what size he uses. What 3-bet size that he uses will be your 4-bet size. Against that, you get jammed on a lot.
Yeah.
And then the other
That's
option is whether you want to look at like min 5-bet.
min 5-bet. No, not really. I think just calling and jamming is probably going to be. I mean, is there really that much EV to be gained by looking at
I
the min
mean,
5-bet?
here it's saying specifically with like kings, you can probably gain half a big blind. Probably with aces is going to be similar.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. I tend to just trap aces against 4-bets in general. Like the SPR is so low anyway. Like you can just check raise the flop at the turn, or it's like a 2-street game at that point anyway. I know that's pretty simplified, but
Kings is a bit different. Like there's benefit from reducing his power ratio even further.
Hmm.
I mean, it depends on what 4-bet size that he uses. So if he uses a 4-bet size that's too big, you're just going to be jamming kings anyway. So, and it might be too big depending on what we looked at, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of this is going to depend on the leaks that he shows. I'm pretty confident that I can like sort of square up a lot of the leaks in my own game between now and then. I think it's going to be. I think it's probably going to be a close match if he's any good. If he's not any good, then we'll probably just win regardless. But I expect him to be good. Everyone else expects him to be good. All right, good to go.
so there was this 24, 24, 27. Run them all in. Limp raise. 29, okay. 23, 23, 18. Yeah, I mean, it's probably closer to 24 is what he's got. 24, 25. I'm just trying to avoid that. So it'll probably end up being like a lot of min or close to min.
And 4-bets.
4-bets like or like 2x 4-bets for you. So like it'll be close to like 21, 22.
Yeah.
And that'll wire up his.
That's gonna have a big effect on the range construction, though, right? Like the
Yeah,
smaller
yeah.
you go, the more merged you go.
Yeah, it'll end up being pretty difficult for him. So like here 21, there's like a whole bunch of like floats with some of the stuff versus like 23 is a lot less of less of that and more jamming. So him going to like 10, 10 and a half, like 2.5, 10. And here it's like 22 is good. If he goes 25 and he's just playing 25 and he's got like these kind of floats, and then suddenly you throw a 20 on him and he's like call like 10, 8 suited, 9, 7 suited, like king, queen offsuit, ace, jack offsuit, and doesn't know what to do. And like these min 5 bets he probably doesn't have. So we're probably going to be losing some EV there. So yeah, I'll work on it. I'll send you a Bitcoin address. You send me $500, and that'll cover the solvers, and I'll get everything that you need. You just worry about studying, and I'll worry about running the sims. Yeah.
Great. Sounds good.
And then after this challenge is over, I'll retain rights to the sims to sell them on the viewer, and that'll cover my time setting up these sims.
Appreciate it.
So you're just paying for the servers. Sorry?
Are you in med school right now?
No, I'm working as a doctor now, so I passed med school.
Really? That's sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh was telling me you were in med school.
Well, I was in med school and now I finished med school. So yeah.
Nice. When did you graduate?
Last year, end of last year. So yeah, I just started.
Really? Damn.
I'm working in
That's dope.
psychiatry now, so
How do you like
fair
it?
amount of psychiatry is great. It's very, very, very chill. You make all your mind just talking to people. It's great. Just examine people by talking to them as well. So I've been examining you this whole time. Kidding. It's a bit of an interesting field, psychiatry. A lot of
You meet like a lot of interesting people.
I mean, the people that you work with are kind of similar to people that you work with in other fields. The patients are different. I mean, because they're coming to you for a different problem. So like the problem that they'll come to you for often isn't the problem that you're treating, right? So like they'll come to you saying that they've got fucking bugs on their skin or some shit, right? And like they don't have bugs on their skin, they're delusional, they're having a psychotic episode. So you're treating a psychotic episode and just ends up resolving the bugs on their skin. So yeah, stuff like that.
That's really interesting.
All right. We'll hang off now. I'll upload this recording onto YouTube so you can watch it again later. As like a hidden video, so no one else will see it besides anyone who has a link. So I'll send the link to you only. But if that link gets out, then other people will be able to see it. So don't share it with anyone.
Will do.
Great. See ya. If you have any questions or comments, just send me a message. And also this time of the day, so the UTC 3, UTC 4 is pretty good for me during the weekends. So if you want to once again next week when we've got the new sims, we'll have that. So the things that you'll need to do is seriously consider getting Monka Solver because it's good and you can run like really good preflop sims with it, and really good exploit preflop sims really quickly. So I can show you how to do that as well. So like even the computer that you have now, I'm sure will be able to run lots of interesting preflop stuff with it. So it's a really good solver for that. Like I'm running on my current computer like a 6 max anti limp min raise thing right now for someone, and like it doesn't need that much RAM in order to do it if you know what to do in terms of like shrinking the multi-way game tree. The heads up, you don't have to worry about any of that. It'll just be normal, and heads up is actually really well abstracted down, so you can get really good estimates of pre-flop without that. So it'll probably help you a lot for this particular challenge as well, because if you have a particular idea and you want to run it in through the pre-flop solver, you'll be able to do that like overnight essentially, and get a good estimation of whether or not a particular node lock pre-flop or whatever makes sense. So yeah, I strongly recommend getting that. I'll run the big preflop simulations with the multiple sizes and stuff. I'll get the big one running that's close to GTO. I'll get the 2 exploit ones running. That will help you with your specific sizes with the challenge. and then we'll go from there. And so that those two exploit ones, one for you being in the small blind, one for you being in the big blind, hopefully those two will be done in a week by the time we talk next. But the big one that'll run in the background will probably take a bit longer.
Okay. How long do Munker exploit sims usually take?
I mean, it depends on the size of the tree. So like heads up, if you just have one size here, one size for each player, they'll run really quickly. It can run really quickly. It can run like overnight. But with multiple sizes for each player and a really big post-flop tree, then it will take a while.
Okay.
So if you just want a really quick estimate of whether a particular exploit will work, you can do it overnight. If you want proper ranges, then you need to run it for longer.
Makes sense.
All right, great. So I'll do that. You do your thing, and then we'll meet probably in a week again.
Sounds good. All right, see you then.
All right, over now.